The Thanksgiving turkey sat untouched at the center of my parents' immaculate dining table, steam rising into the chandelier light as familiar judgment filled the air instead of gratitude. 30 years old and still no real job, my father, James Morrison, CEO of Morrison Global Industries, announced to the gathered family members. I suppose that's what we get for letting her study computer science instead of business administration. My mother smoothed her Hermès scarf, avoiding eye contact. Well, at least Claire's sister Patricia is making us proud. Junior VP at 32. The youngest female executive in Morrison's history. I checked my phone discreetly beneath the table, reading a message from my COO. Final paperwork complete. Board votes unanimous. Transfer scheduled for 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Actually, I started, but Patricia cut me off, her designer blazer practically gleaming with self-importance. You know, sis, there's still an entry-level position in our marketing department. I could put in a good word. She smiled with perfectly practiced condescension. Though you'd have to wear something more professional. Her eyes lingered on my simple black turtleneck and slacks. If she'd known it was a custom-made Loro Piana piece that cost more than her monthly salary, she might have held her tongue. But that wasn't my style. Obvious displays of wealth were more their territory. I'm fine, thanks, I replied quietly, watching another notification light up my phone. Asian markets preparing for announcement. Projections exceeding expectations. Fine. My father's voice boomed across the turkey. Living in that tiny apartment doing whatever it is you do on your laptop all day? That's not fine, Claire. That's wasting your potential. My brother-in-law Thomas, Patricia's husband and Morrison's chief financial officer, couldn't resist joining in. You know, I saw an interesting article about unemployment among millennials. Apparently, many of them hide behind terms like entrepreneur and startup founder, when they're really just failures. I finished for him, noting the time, 2:55 p.m. Well, I wouldn't say failure exactly, he backpedaled unconvincingly. Just unrealistic. My phone vibrated again. Press release prepared. Legal team standing by. Speaking of realistic, my father continued, cutting into the turkey with aggressive precision, it's time you faced facts, Claire. You had every advantage. Private schools, Ivy League education, a guaranteed position at Morrison Global. Instead, you chose to play with computers in your apartment. Patricia nodded sagely. The corporate world requires structure, discipline. Not everyone is cut out for real business. I thought about the past 5 years. The careful planning, the quiet acquisitions through shell companies, the strategic positioning. While they'd been congratulating themselves at board meetings, I'd been building something they couldn't see. Or rather wouldn't see. Tell us, dear. My mother tried for a gentler approach. What exactly do you do all day? Surely there must be some proper jobs in computers. Before I could answer, phones started buzzing around the table. First Thomas's, then my father's, then Patricia's. Banking notifications. What they? Thomas stared at his screen, face paling. The Morrison Global shares. There. Going up, I finished for him, checking my own notifications. About 40% in the last minute, I'd say. My father's hand froze mid-slice through the turkey. How did you know that? The same way I know that in about 30 seconds, you're all going to get calls from your banks about unusual trading activity. I glanced at my watch. And in about 45 seconds the press release will go live. Right on cue, phone started ringing. Patricia fumbled with hers, perfectly manicured fingers trembling slightly. This is some kind of mistake. The trading system must be glitching. No glitch, I said calmly, standing up from the table. Just the market responding to Phoenix Tech's acquisition of Morrison Global Industries. The turkey knife clattered from my father's hand. Phoenix Tech? The tech giant that's been disrupting traditional industries? The one with the mysterious CEO who never appears in public. The very same, I replied as more phones began to ring, board members, executives, lawyers, all trying to understand what was happening to their company. But that's impossible, Patricia stammered. Morrison Global is a family-controlled company. We own the majority shares. You did, I corrected her. Until about 2 minutes ago when the final transfer was completed. Though technically, Phoenix has been acquiring shares through various holdings for the past 3 years. Thomas was frantically scrolling through financial data on his phone. This can't be legal. I would have seen the acquisitions in the financial reports. Would you? I asked mildly. The same way you saw the systematic overvaluation of Morrison's traditional assets? Or the hidden tech debt that's been accumulating under your outdated infrastructure? The color drained from his face as he realized just how much I knew about Morrison's books. Breaking news alerts started flooding everyone's phones. Phoenix Tech acquires Morrison Global in surprise move. Tech giant expands into traditional manufacturing. Morrison Global stock soars on acquisition news. Claire, my father's voice had lost its usual authority. What have you done? I smiled slightly, thinking of all the Thanksgiving dinners where I'd endured their judgment, their mockery, their certainty that they knew better. I did exactly what you always wanted, I replied. I went into the family business. I just did it my way. The turkey continued to cool, forgotten, as their phones kept ringing with the news that would reshape not just their company, but their entire understanding of what it meant to be unemployed at 30. Sometimes the best response to judgment isn't words. Sometimes it's a $3 billion acquisition. The dining room had transformed from a stage for family judgment into ground zero of a corporate earthquake. My sister's perfectly curated Thanksgiving table setting was now buried under hastily opened laptops and frantically checked phones. This is a joke, Patricia declared, though her shaking hands betrayed her uncertainty. You can't possibly be. Her voice trailed off as her phone displayed the latest headline. Phoenix Tech CEO revealed. Claire Morrison, 30, emerges as tech industry's most powerful leader. My CEO's voice came through the speaker of my phone, set carefully next to my untouched cranberry sauce. Ms. Morrison, CNBC is standing by for your live interview. The helicopter will arrive in 20 minutes. Helicopter. My mother's voice rose an octave. What helicopter? As if in answer, the distant thrum of rotor blades became audible over the suburban quiet of their gated community. That would be my executive team, I replied calmly, taking a sip of water. We have a press conference scheduled at Morrison Global headquarters in an hour. The markets wait for no one, not even Thanksgiving dinner. Thomas was furiously typing on his laptop, his CFO mask cracking. This isn't possible. The share transfers. The acquisitions. I would have noticed. Would you? I raised an eyebrow. The same way you noticed the shell companies buying up Morrison's suppliers? Or the tech startups collaborating with your divisions? Amazing how invisible something can be when you're convinced you're looking down at it. My father had been uncharacteristically quiet, his face cycling through shades of red as he processed the implications. The board, he finally managed. They'll never approve this. They already have, I replied, pulling up the documents on my tablet. Unanimously, in fact. Turns out when you show them actual innovation instead of quarterly cost-cutting measures, they're quite receptive. Patricia's designer blazer was distinctly rumpled now as she paced behind her chair. But I'm executive vice president. I have contracts, guarantees. I corrected. Phoenix Tech has a strict merit-based leadership policy. No more positions based on last names or family connections. You're firing your own sister? My mother's voice wavered between horror and fascination. I'm implementing proper corporate governance, I replied. Something Morrison Global should have done years ago instead of turning into a family country club. My phone buzzed again, stock now up 75%. Asian markets preparing to open. European markets demanding statement. Thomas was still frantically searching through financial records. The technology integration projects from last year. The efficiency consultants. The digital transformation initiative. All Phoenix Tech subsidiaries, I confirmed. While you were mocking my computer games, I was digitally transforming Morrison Global from the inside out. Those entry-level coders you barely noticed? My team. The cloud services you overpaid for? My companies. The helicopter sound grew louder, and through the dining room's floor-to-ceiling windows, we could see neighbors emerging from their Thanksgiving celebrations to watch the approaching aircraft. But the money, my father sputtered. Where did you get the capital to buy your company? I finished for him. Remember that silly little app I created in college? The one you said was a waste of time? It sold for 9 figures in a private acquisition. That was just the start. My mother sank into her chair, her social planning circuits completely overloaded. All those times we tried to set you up with proper jobs. I had a proper job, I replied. CEO of a tech empire. You just couldn't see it because it didn't match your definition of success. The helicopter was visible now, its sleek black form bearing the Phoenix Tech logo in subtle silver. My executive team would be arriving with contracts, press releases, and the documentation that would reshape Morrison Global Industries from a family fiefdom into a modern technology-driven corporation. Claire, my father tried one last time, his voice almost pleading, we only wanted what was best for you. All those times we pushed you toward real business. This is real business, Dad. I gestured to my phone as another series of headlines rolled in. The fact that you can't understand it is exactly why Morrison Global needs new leadership. Patricia had finally stopped pacing, her perfect facade cracking completely. But what about the family legacy? What about everything we've built? You mean everything our great-grandfather built? I corrected her. The legacy you've been coasting on while the company fell behind every technological advancement of the last decade? The helicopter was descending now, its downdraft creating ripples in the neglected Thanksgiving wine glasses. Through the windows I could see my executive team emerging, each carrying the tools of modern business, tablets, laptops, digital contracts ready for execution. Your severance packages are generous, I said, standing as Sarah, my CEO, approached the front door. Though given the company's performance under your leadership, it's more than you deserve. The doorbell rang, its chime cutting through the heavy silence that had fallen over the dining room. My mother moved automatically to answer it, years of social training taking over, then stopped, realizing she no longer knew her place in this new reality. I'll get it, I said quietly. After all, they're my employees now. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served with turkey. Sometimes it arrives in a helicopter, bearing acquisition papers and a new corporate order. They had called me unemployed at 30. I had employed them all instead. The Thanksgiving turkey grew colder as my executive team efficiently transformed the formal dining room into an impromptu corporate command center. Sarah, my CEO, was arranging documents on one end of the table while my family huddled at the other, watching their empire slip through their fingers like the gravy congealing in its silver boat. The press conference is scheduled for 5 p.m., Sarah announced, her tablet displaying a cascade of media requests. CNBC, Bloomberg, and Forbes are leading with the story. Wall Street analysts are calling it the tech acquisition of the decade. My father's hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the ownership documents. These dates, these shell companies, you've been planning this for years. Since the day you told me I was just playing with computers instead of learning real business, I confirmed. Consider it a long-term investment strategy. Patricia was still frantically scrolling through her phone, watching Morrison Global's stock price soar on news of the acquisition. But all those board meetings, those strategic planning sessions, where you discussed how to maintain traditional business values? I smiled slightly. I had access to every presentation, every memo, every confidential discussion. Amazing what people will share with the quiet IT consultant in the corner. Thomas suddenly looked up from his laptop, face ashen. The digital transformation budget we approved last quarter, the one I said was excessive, was actually paying for Phoenix Tech to assess and value every aspect of Morrison Global. I finished for him. You literally funded your own acquisition analysis. My mother, ever the social survivor, tried a different approach. Darling, surely we can discuss this as a family? Perhaps over coffee in the living room? The Hendersons are coming for dessert and they'd love to hear about your success. The Hendersons? I raised an eyebrow. You mean the private equity firm that's been trying to buy into Morrison Global? They're welcome to talk to Phoenix Tech's Investor Relations Department. Sarah stepped forward with another set of documents. Ms. Morrison, the transition team is ready to begin. We have the new organizational charts prepared. Patricia straightened her blazer, attempting to regain some authority. Obviously, as executive VP, I should be involved in any restructuring discussions. Actually, I interrupted, your position has been eliminated. Phoenix Tech doesn't believe in redundant management layers or nepotistic appointments. Eliminated, she choked. You can't fire me. I'm your sister. Exactly why you need to go, I replied calmly. This company will now be run on merit, not DNA. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Now see here, Claire. I built this company into an outdated, technologically inferior organization that's been losing market share for the past 5 years. I cut him off. Would you like to see the real numbers? The ones Thomas has been hiding from the board. Thomas's face went from pale to gray. You can't prove. Actually, I can. I pulled up more data on the dining room's newly installed displays. Phoenix Tech's AI systems have been analyzing Morrison's books since we began acquiring shares. Shall we discuss the creative accounting? The hidden losses? The failed projects you've been concealing? The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of laptops and tablets. Through the windows, we could see more media vans arriving, their satellite dishes rising above the manicured hedges of my parents' estate. The press is asking about the family angle, Sarah noted, reviewing more messages. They're particularly interested in how a unemployed, 30-year-old acquired a multi-billion-dollar company from her own family. Tell them it's a story about vision, I replied. About seeing the future while others clung to the past. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed napkin. All those holiday dinners where we worried about your future were actually strategy sessions, I nodded. Every criticism, every dismissal, every condescending suggestion helped me understand exactly what needed to change at Morrison Global. The screens around us filled with more breaking news. Phoenix Tech CEO reveals family connection to acquired company. Wall Street stunned by Thanksgiving Day takeover. Morrison Global shares hit record high on acquisition news. Your grandfather founded this company. My father tried one last time. He built it from nothing. And I'm saving it, I replied firmly. From your outdated management and Patricia's inherited entitlement. The Morrison name will continue, but under competent leadership. Sarah appeared again with more documents. The board is waiting for your video call. They're eager to discuss the integration timeline. Of course, I stood straightening my turtleneck. Time to introduce Morrison Global's new direction to the world. Wait, Patricia called out desperately. What about our positions? Our future?